You know when people say, nothing ever happens where I live? People often use this term so lightly. Whenever I hear someone from a city or a big town say something like this, I can't help but laugh and think, well, you should come where I live. The name's Ricky. I'm 19 years old and I live in New York. But I'm not originally from the Big Apple. I'm actually from a small town in Texas. A town where nothing ever happens. Or, well, so I thought. Even though I was born and raised in Texas, there wasn't much to do. But, I was happy. It's where I had my friends and where I had my family. And as you might know, the positive thing about living in a small place is that people tend to know each other a lot better. And I quite enjoyed being known. Many people in my town, particularly younger people like myself, are always talking about moving out. Most people did, actually. In fact, pretty much everybody always left as soon as they finished high school. Moving away was all my friends talked about. Moving to Dallas, Houston, LA, or even moving to Europe or Japan. Everybody always had big plans, except for me. I actually never wanted to move out. I'm just not that adventurous as others, I guess. Unlike many people of my generation, I kind of enjoy regularity, which sounds weird considering I'm now living in one of the biggest cities in the world, but, well, it wasn't really my choice. I had to move here to leave behind memories of something that happened over a year ago. I had to move out so that he wouldn't find me. A year ago, my friends and I graduated from high school. Graduating high school is normally something every kid always dreams of and can't wait for it to happen. But as you can imagine, this wasn't really the case for me because I knew that graduating was the first step for everything to change. Most people, including all my friends, were moving away for university and college. And I just didn't have those kinds of plans. I'd planned to stay in town working for the local steelworks company. I knew staying was the best decision for me, but I was sad about all my friends moving away, and even though they were excited to leave, they were a bit nostalgic too, because this was the last time all of us would get to hang out together. We made a promise last summer that it would just be unforgettable, so we decided to spend as much time together as we could. We did a lot of things every day. Regular things like going to house parties, exploring, going to a nearby town that was more exciting, playing video games, just the usual stuff. We did have fun, but some of the things we did were very ordinary, so we decided to look for something more memorable or exciting to do. And this is when my friend Arlo came out with a brilliant idea. You see, a few miles away from where we lived was this old abandoned fairground. Nobody really knew the history of it. It's just that we knew it had been there for ages. My friends and I had discussed the option of going to this place before, but we never did. However, this time we knew we had to go, since it was possibly our last chance of going there. So on July 15th, my friends and I hopped in a car and went out. About 5 of us, Luke, Kevin, Arlo, Easton, and myself. We drove Luke's father's old truck, blasted some music as loud as we could, and started recording our way there through Instagram Live. And we got there sooner than expected, and we all seemed very hyped about going inside. See, the gates of the place were closed, however, but the bars, well, they were easy to climb. When we all got in there, we were very surprised. Even though the place had been there for ages, everything looked really stable and not new, but it didn't look beaten down or rusted or anything. We began to walk in the dark trying to find some light, but had no success. Without proper lighting, it was hard to see and even harder to record our live stream. And so Easton suggested for us to go inside one of the rides, the closest one we could find, which was the funhouse. As we walked into the funhouse, the place was just as dark as any other, and our data stopped working, so there was no chance of recording. I remember complaining, saying it was a terrible idea to be out there. But Arlo then said he could probably figure out how to make things work. He had worked at a carnival for a couple of years, so he had knowledge on how rides and places like this worked. "Give me 10 minutes max, I'll be back," he said as he left us waiting by the entry of the funhouse. My friends and I calmly waited. We joked around, trying to avoid the awkward silence. And then, suddenly, the lights came on as jolly carnival music began to play. Welcome to the House of Fun. Ladies and gentlemen, walk and discover all the things the House of Fun has to offer. The house is full of surprises that you can't even imagine. So come on in, because this house is a must-see. An enthusiastic, manly voice said. However, there was something strange about his voice. His voice was more fitting for a house of horrors than a funhouse. His voice sounded just like the Crypt Keeper. We decided to wait for Arlo to show up, but 10 minutes passed and nothing, so we decided to give him a call, but conveniently enough, there was no reception anymore. We started debating about what to do, but the more we stood there, the louder the carnival music got, and after 15 minutes, some lights began to flash in a certain direction, showing us where to go. So I get what's going on. This is all a plan, you guys. Arlo clearly wants us to go through without him, said Luke, very convinced. What do you mean by that? He told us to wait here for him. I asked him, confused. Yeah, but don't you guys get it? Luke asked. Arlo was the one who suggested to come here. He was also the one who dragged us to this specific ride, and needless to say, he knows how to make all this shit work. So, it's all a plan. Well, it does sound like something he would do, Kevin said. Yeah, exactly. So let's go, guys, Luke said, all hyped up. You know, are you guys sure? I just think it's better if we stay. I insisted. I think Luke is right. We need to walk around at this point. It seems it's the only way to find Arlo. And like the Crypt Keeper says, let's go and have some fun, said Kevin. I looked at Easton, who had been quiet like he normally was, and even he seemed to agree with them, so I had no choice but to accept. We then started to follow the lights, and as we did, the Crypt Keeper said, "Enjoy while you can." I remember at that moment all of us looked at each other and chuckled. But regardless of how weird it all sounded, we decided to keep going. Our first stop was a room full of balloons, shiny objects, and life-size clown decorations. The room was very big and was full of strange decorations all over the place. One of the most amazing things I remember is that each clown had a different expression. Some of them moved in very realistic manners, which was too much for Easton to handle, since he hates clowns. And so, he decided to go outside and wait. My friends and I kept looking around the giant room for a bit, but we didn't really see much. When we decided to leave, we couldn't find Easton. Luke and Kevin wanted to continue exploring the place, but I felt uneasy knowing that we were starting to split in a place that we didn't know. I pointed this out to them, but they kept insisting everything should be fine, and that it was most likely a plan between Arlo and Easton to creep us out. I would expect that from Arlo, but never from Easton. I was worried, thinking that something bad had happened to him. I don't know why, but I'd never been so paranoid before. I just had a feeling in my gut. Relax. What terrible thing can possibly happen in a funhouse? They both said to me. So we went into the next room. A room full of mirrors that made you look disfigured. This room wasn't interesting at all, and soon enough we moved to the next one. It was a room full of creepy vintage dolls that cried and laughed like real babies. We started to get pretty bored, and so we decided to stop wasting time in the rooms and just look for our friends. However, as we tried to exit, we found something unusual. There was a decoration of a clown standing by the door, but he looked different than the rest of the clowns in the clown room. All the others have a very psychedelic and jolly style, but this one had a particularly uneasy grin, with creepy sharp teeth, and he was wearing white clothes that looked like a hospital gown that seemed like they had blood on. This decoration wasn't there before, and was sort of blocking our way back. Kevin and I stood there without knowing what to do. Luke decided to get close to it, but as soon as he walked towards it, the clown, who was looking down, looked up. "Whoa," we all said. The realistic manner in which he did this creeped us out. "We should probably just continue instead of going back," I said. "Bullshit. I ain't scared of that stupid decoration," Luke said. He decided to go closer to the clown in order to move it, when the clown got one of his arms out of his pocket. It all happened so fast that we didn't realize what he had in his hand. And the next thing we knew, Luke was screaming and his shoulder was bleeding. He had been stabbed. The clown laughed. I recognized the laugh. The guy on the loudspeaker. Before we knew it, the clown started walking towards Luke, who was lying on the floor. Fortunately, Luke managed to move out of there and all three of us ran the opposite direction to the other door. Each room of the funhouse had two doors. One was the door that lets you into the room. The other moves to the next room and eventually helps you finish the labyrinth. And since we couldn't go back, we continued. We ran extremely fast, following the light, and eventually were guided to this room that was completely dark. "Thank you for coming to the House of Fun. Congratulations on making it this far. Now let me show you your prize," the crypt keeper said as the lights turned on and showed us something I never thought I would see. The room was full of corpses. Each one of them hung like decorations. Most of them were already decomposed, but there was a couple that were recognizable. The corpses of my two friends, Arlo and Easton. Their faces were expressionless, and their clothes were soaked in blood. As we saw this, Kevin and Luke began to scream and cry while I just froze in fear. We heard the laughing again, and before we knew it, there was the clown standing by the door. At first, I thought he was a real person dressed up, but his movements were completely off. They were very mechanical. There's no way a real person moves like that. He moved just like a marionette. One from hell. Before we knew it, it was already in front of us. Luke and I managed to move on time, but unfortunately, Kevin didn't. The next thing we knew, the clown was brutally stabbing him. Luke and I wanted to do something to help him. We should have done something. But we knew it would be too late, and so we simply ran away as fast as we could. Luke was losing a lot of blood due to the wound on his shoulder, but he held on to me and we managed to run out of the funhouse. Climbing the fence in order to get out of the amusement park was definitely a task. And I don't know if it was due to Luke's wound and me being nervous, but it felt like it took us ages. We eventually got to Luke's car. I can't believe how lucky we were to have his car that day. If we would have taken the ride in any of the other guys' cars, we wouldn't have made it. I can't drive, so despite his shoulder, Luke had to do it. I remember him screaming, "What the fuck, dude? What the fuck was that? Why? Why would he do that?" as we were getting into the car. "I'm not sure if that was even a person, Luke," I said in between tears. "Of course it was. I'm driving us to the police," Luke said as he pulled the car over as fast as he could. But as we were leaving, suddenly, something jumped onto the car. And it was him. A damn clown. We screamed, and Luke almost lost control. The clown was on the front window, laughing and still holding his bloody knife, trying to smash the window. Luke started to maneuver the car so that the clown would fall off, and after a minute or so, he succeeded at it. I looked back at the clown and saw how he stood up, as if nothing had happened, and began to run again towards us. Those two instances, seeing him so close, and how his skin looked like it was made of wood, and seeing him stand up like it was nothing, and seeing him running made me realize that even if it sounds crazy, well, it's true. It was not a person. It must have been a demon or a possessed doll, but I don't know what the hell it was. Luckily, we did eventually lose him. Luke and I managed to get to the police where he mainly did the talking. Luke refused to believe what he saw was not a person, and I just didn't know what to say, so I didn't say much of anything. The police went back to the place and found the corpses, including the corpses of our friends. In fact, there were 27 corpses in total. Unfortunately, they didn't find the clown there. They took pictures of all the clowns they found at the funhouse, but none of them was him. He was different. He looked sinister with his huge sharp smile and his big red eyes. In the end, the police concluded it was a killer dressed up. Luke believed this too. Well, it's easier to believe that the one who did all this was a human rather than something that's not meant to be real. A few months after all that, I just couldn't handle it. Wherever I went, I saw his face, even though he wasn't there. I didn't want to wait my whole life for the day he would come back and kill me, because I knew he would. After all, he's free now. And that's why I had to move out of my hometown, even though that was never the plan.